الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما نافعا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون؟ كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد. فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين. ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. This is a new surah after Surah Al-Mumtahina in the 28th juz. The name of this surah is Surah As-Saff. As-Saff means the row or rows, like we stand in rows in prayer. Sufuf, right? They say atimmu sufuf, like fill in the gaps, complete your rows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the rows of soldiers in combat in this surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses His love for such soldiers who stand in rows, because in those days combat was on the battlefield where the two armies would confront one another and the armies would be arranged in rows. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses His love for those soldiers who stand up in rows for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul, and to defend His deen for the sake of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses His love for them in this surah, and this is why the surah is called Surah As-Saff, referring to the rows of soldiers who stand for Allah and His Rasul in combat. There's some context to the revelation of this surah, and it is relevant to us too, inshallah. And the incident that occurred was there was a group of Sahaba radiallahu anhum who got together and they would discuss obviously religious matters. So there was a group. Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anhu narrates this. Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah has this hadith in his book. He narrates that this group of Sahaba got together and they were discussing, and this discussion came up, or this comment was made, that what would be the most beloved deed to Allah that we could devote ourselves to that deed. They wanted to know. They were asking one another, what would be the most beloved deed to Allah that we could devote ourselves to it? In one narration, it says that someone exclaimed that if we were to know what is most beloved to Allah, like I would give my life for it. If I was to know what is the most beloved deed in the eyes of Allah subhanahu. They were having this discussion, and there was a message that came from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was in his home, and he sent a message, and he said, call for me this individual, this individual, this individual, with their names. That shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of this discussion and what they were talking about. So he called them by their name, and then when they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they gathered, the Prophet ﷺ, obviously after inquiring, you were the individuals, he recited this whole surah to them. In the beginning of the surah, it addresses this claim of theirs. It addresses the claim in the sense that Allah reveals what is the most beloved deed to Him that a believer can devote his self to. And that is very clear based on what we just mentioned, standing in the rows in combat for Allah and His Rasul to defend the deen of Allah. This is the most beloved deed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jihad fi sabilillah, qital, combat. But before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the, you could say, the slip of these believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals that to make these bold claims without putting one's trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not something pleasing to Allah. Allah does not like this. It's called da'wah. To make claims, bold claims, that I'm going to do this. We will do this for you. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reprimanded them for these type of claims. One of the reasons is that some commentators say these ayat were revealed after Uhud. And in Uhud, some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum also ended up fleeing from battle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in many ayat of Surah Al-Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in one ayah that you people were anticipating, or you were desiring to die for the sake of Allah, but when death came in front of your eyes, you turned around and fled. What happened? وَلَقَدْ كُنْتُمْ تَمَنَّوْنَ الْمَوْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ تَلْقَوْا فَقَدْ رَأَيْتُمُوهُ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. And this was in Badr. Right? This is also related to the Battle of Badr. In Badr, when the discussion came of freeing the captives, and they were told that if you free them, then the following year, this many number of your own will be martyred, will be killed in battle. And they said, we welcome shahada, right? We are ready to die for the sake of Allah. But then when death came, death is not something easy, right? When the time comes to give one's life for the sake of Allah, right? Not many people can remain firm. Not many people can stand firm in that situation. It is one of the most difficult situations for a person to be in. And there were some who turned around and fled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded them of their intentions. So in this situation also, on this occasion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was reprimanding them, saying that why do you make these bold claims when you're not sure if you will be able to follow up on them? So Allah addresses this first in the opening verses, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the rest of the surah will speak about the virtue of standing for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, defending the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and why this was an obligation that was put on this ummah, and why this standing up for the deen of Allah is so important, right? For justice to prevail on earth, for the deen of Allah to be established on earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak about that in the rest of the surah. So He starts the surah Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah says, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. All that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth, him the glorification of Allah. Sabbaha means to do tasbih, subhanallah, to glorify Allah, to proclaim His purity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, all that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth, they proclaim the glorification and purity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their creator. Meaning all of creation recognizes who their creator is, except for the human being and jinn, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given free will to recognize or not to recognize. But besides that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying everything that is ma fi samawat includes everything in the heavens. Whatever exists in the heavens, what we know of, and there's what we don't know is a lot more than what we do know of in the heavens and in the earth. Allah is saying every creation of Allah, whether it be living, non-living, animate, inanimate, everything that is created, Allah says, glorifies Allah in its own way. Allah says, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. In another ayah, you may not understand their form of tasbih, but they are in tasbih. The mountains are in tasbih. The trees are in tasbih. The sun, the moon, the sky, the stars, everything is in tasbih of Allah. Allah reminds human beings that all the creation, because they recognize, the fact that they recognize that they are created by Allah itself is a glorification of Allah. So Allah is reminding human beings and jinn that look, all the creation recognize who their creator is, and they glorify Him. They are singing His praise in their own way. What happened to you, O human? You are the only one who has rebelled against Allah, and you are not willing to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and proclaim His purity. So in this way, Allah reminds us, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. All that is in the heavens and all that is in earth proclaim the glorification, the purity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. And He is almighty, He is all wise. Then Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. O you who have believed, لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Why do you claim that which you are not sure you will do? This is one translation you could do. لِمَ تَقُولُونَ. Why do you claim? تَقُولُون means to say. Like, why do you say? Why do you make these claims? مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. That you're not sure you will be able to do. Or simply the translation is that you do not do. Why do you say that which you do not do? كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. It is a grave act of displeasure. Right, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا. It is extremely displeasing to Allah. Maqt means to be detested. كَبُرَ مَقْتًا means extremely detested. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like this at all. Allah says, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. It is extremely detestable, extremely displeasing to Allah, عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. That you say that which you do not do. Now, take this ayah, take this instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you could say reprimand, when you apply it to the context we are talking about, these Sahaba. Now, obviously, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, we wouldn't assume about them that they were making these claims falsely, right? So, one is to make a claim, but know that you're not going to do it. This is also included under this ayah. So we're going to, inshallah, we'll try to determine what scenarios are included under this ayah and what are not included. Because some people use this verse for the wrong reason, right? Or in the wrong place they use this. So the verse is actually talking about making claims of doing something. And it could also include, and we would say the Sahaba would not be under this category, but the worst claims would be those claims that are purely false, meaning the one who is making them knows he's not going to do them. right? He professes he's going to do something, but he knows in his heart he's not going to do it. Right? This is uh, a grave sin in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make bold claims and intend not to follow through with them. They would fall under this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why do you say things that you know you're not going to do? لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. This is extremely displeasing to Allah, that you say things that you know you're not going to do. Why do you make these claims? I mean, and everyone would understand the evil in this. There's a whole group in our society that would fit this ayah. They make claims, but they know they're not going to follow through with them. They're just making claims so that they can get votes of people, right? There's a whole group in society, right, that they're just full of claims. They will say, we will do this for you, we will do this for you, we will do this. And they even say things that they know they can't do. It's beyond their control or authority, but they still make these claims, say that they will do things, and they never have intention to do them, right? They will fall under this ayah. A lot of times there are people marketing themselves or their programs, and they say, if you take this, if you do this, we will do this for you, we will do this for you, we will provide this for you. And there's actually no intent. If there is a sincere intent, then that's something different. But there is no intent whatsoever to provide that level, that standard, those services. It's just to draw clients or to draw customers. They would also fall under this ayah. This is a grave sin in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously, to make a claim, what we call a da'wah, to make a claim knowing that a person is not going to fulfill this claim, like I will do this or I will not do this, knowing that he's not going to follow through with it, this is highly reprimanded, displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is that a person makes a claim and they have like intention to do it, but in making this claim their eyes are only on themselves, and this is possibly, right, outwardly what the Sahaba radiallahu anhu may have fallen into, that they were making this claim that if we know what's most beloved to Allah, we will surely give our life for it, right? But they forgot to attribute the ability to do this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is similar to the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Don't ever say that I am going to do something tomorrow, except saying insha'Allah. Right? Meaning that whenever a person intends to do something, they should keep in mind that it can only be done if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it. It's not in our power to do anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Why do you claim that you will do things that you're not even sure you will be able to do on your own? Right? Meaning that you won't be able to do them on your own unless Allah helps you. So make intentions to do things with the help of Allah, that insha'Allah we will do. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to us what is most beloved to Him, we will devote ourselves insha'Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this way, and looking at what happened in Uhud, this also becomes more relevant. Allah is saying that you're making these claims, but when the situation came, what happened? Right? So don't be so bold in your claims. Remain humble. Right? And whenever you do intend to do something, make sure you seek the help of Allah. That with the help of Allah, insha'Allah, we will do this. So this also falls under this ayah. This will be a lesser degree, but this is also disliked. Right? To make a claim, to intend to do something, or claim that a person will do something, but a person forgets to seek the assistance of Allah and does not say insha'Allah. This is also something that we should stay away from. So these are the two different scenarios, you could say, that are included under this ayah. What is not included under this ayah is people who command, encourage one another to do good, and forbid one another from evil, even though they may not be acting upon what they are calling people towards. Amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. Those people who are engaged in amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar, telling people to do something good, but they are themselves are not punctual or are not doing that good. They're stopping people from an evil, even though they themselves might be involved in it. Right? Obviously, this is another issue, but this is not what the ayat is talking about. So we should make that clear, that the ayat is talking about claims that people make, and they should not be purely false, nor they should be claims based on one's own abilities, but they should be based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. The ayat is not talking about those who do amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar and telling them lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. I'm saying this because some people use this ayah to oppose people who do amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. Say, brother, lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. Like, why are you saying things you don't do? Why are you prohibiting people from things that you might be doing yourself? And in this way, they're trying to stop the person from doing amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. That's not the purpose of this ayah. The issue of amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar, we should also understand very clearly. And amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar is addressed in another ayah, not this one, but in another ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually addressed the Yahud. And He said, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ. Like, do you command people to do good and you forget yourselves? Like, how disingenuous, how insincere is this? And the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, right in the beginning, and it was revealed regarding the scholars of the Yahud, because one of their habits or one of their traits was that they knew the Qur'an was true. They knew the Prophet ﷺ was the last messenger. He was the one who they were waiting for. They used to actually tell some of their relatives, some of their close relatives, those people who they knew, they would tell them that accept Islam, it's the true religion. But when it came to themselves, they did not accept Islam. They stayed Yahudi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayah, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ. Are you telling people to do good, meaning accept Islam? Those people who you care about, you're telling them to accept Islam. But you yourselves are not accepting Islam. They had other reasons not to accept Islam, right? One was the money would stop, right? Because they would have to now follow the Prophet. They're not the leaders anymore. They're the followers. When people are in positions of leadership, then there are perks, you could say, right? There are monetary benefits that people acquire. So, and then there are other reasons. But the Mufassirun mentioned that riyasa, right? They would lose their authority if they would have accepted Islam. So that's one of the reasons why they didn't. So Allah reprimanded them, scolded them, saying, what kind of people are you? You're telling other people to accept Islam, but you yourself are not accepting Islam, knowing it's true, right? So Allah says, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do you command people to do good, but you forget yourselves? This ayah is related to Amr bil Ma'ruf. Obviously, accepting Islam, belief is the greatest ma'ruf. But all other good will also fall under this. And this becomes a reminder for us too, that because this ummah as a whole, every one of us, we are commanded to do amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. It's an obligation. We must understand this. And this is emphasized through so many ayat. This is emphasized through so many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, you can't deny it. This is actually an obligation upon every believer to do amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. Obviously, the capacity would be different, every individual's capacity. So a father, it would be an obligation upon him to do amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar with his children, because he has a level of authority over them, to encourage them to do good and to forbid them from evil. A teacher would be obligated with his students. People of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted knowledge of deen, their responsibility in this regard would be higher, greater than those who do not have that level of knowledge. But every believer has some knowledge of this deen. The fact that Allah is one, every believer has this knowledge. The prayers, and everyone knows what is good, what is evil. And therefore, whoever they are able to speak to or encourage, even friends amongst one another, Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar is an obligation upon everyone in this ummah. The ruling of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar is different from jihad fi sabilillah, to fight for the sake of Allah. Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar is a general obligation upon everyone, right? Every believer, male and female, who are mature, that they should, in their own capacity, encourage one another. And this, not only the reason why it's an obligation is the life of this ummah depends on it. We should understand this very clearly. The life of this ummah, right? The spirit of this ummah, the iman of this ummah, right? The practices of this ummah, they depend on Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar. This is why it becomes an obligation. Obviously, if something is an obligation, there would be great importance associated with it. And the abandoning such an obligation, there would be great consequences. And this is how our scholars explain that if this ummah stops doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar, it will eventually go away from the deen of Allah. This ummah will perish if it stops Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar. If they stop encouraging one another. We're seeing the results of this. The level of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar. Like even those who grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? Even we understand. When we grew up in the 80s and 90s, people can attest to this. Like anyone who was older than us would be able to like grab us by the ear and say, "Why are you doing this?" Right? Like would be able to scold us, and we would just, he's like my father, right? He's older than me. He has a right to do that. And they would do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil in their own way, right? Meaning that they would reprimand us for the wrongs we do. They would encourage us. But we see as the time goes along, now people are scared to do this. People don't do this anymore. That who knows whose child he is? It's not my job. It's his parents. They're responsible. And as a community, we've stopped encouraging one another to do good and forbidding one another from evil for whatever reason, right? One of the reasons could be that we think that I'm not good myself. So how can I tell someone to do good? I'm involved in sin myself. How can I tell someone to refrain from sin? This is the exact mentality that we are warned not to fall into. This is actually, to understand the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf, this is an obligation regardless of whether we are practicing or not. Whether we ourselves are adherent to all the commands and refrain from every sin or not, it's still an obligation. We still have to do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar, and encourage one another. And, again, forbid one another, because we need this reminder. When we do this as a community, it brings about good in the community. And it suppresses and eliminates evil. This Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar. And this is why it's an obligation, regardless of how practicing we are or not. It's a separate obligation. So we must understand this. And it's not something that we can say, oh, if we're not practicing, then we can't do it. That is what the shaitan wants us to think. And in some way, he is successful, right, in stopping the ummah from doing Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar, whispering to them, how can you tell people to do good when you're not doing it yourself? How can you stop people from evil when you're not stopping yourself? Stop doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, Daniel. So we stop. And we see the results of this now. How far our generations are gone from deen, because there's no one to remind them. There's no one to speak to them. And this, this character, this quality that we should have had as a community has become so weak. It's not strong enough now to help one another. So this is why Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar is an obligation upon all of us in our own capacity. And we should seek forgiveness from Allah. Each and every one of us, we are deficient in this regard. Right? The level of Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar that we should be engaged in, we are not. And therefore we should seek for Allah's forgiveness, and we should admit that, oh Allah, we are weak. We have faltered in this obligation. That's in relation to the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. On the other hand, this ayah that we were talking about, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ, not this one of Surah As-Saff, because we said this is not related to Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. The ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, that ayat reminds us as an ummah that when we do Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, we should not be those people who do Amr bil Ma'ruf like the scholars of the Yahud, who intentionally did not do what they were telling others to do. Like, we shouldn't be those people who, after fulfilling the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, don't care about their own actions. Because there are warnings regarding this too, right? That when we tell people to do good, we should be the first to act upon it. When we forbid people from evil, we should be the first to refrain from it. At least we should have an intention. At least we should have an intention. And the warnings are grave of those people who, do Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, but they have no concern of reforming themselves, living up to what they are telling others to do. And unfortunately, we are living in a time now that this is becoming an art, believe it or not. I'm not sure if you're understanding what I'm trying to say. This is actually becoming a profession, right? That people are able to do Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar and totally detaching it from their own actions. Like a person is not worried about how I'm behaving. So I would be able to give a lecture on the importance of the 5 daily prayers, right, and their virtues, but I will not care if I'm not doing them. I will be able to give a beautiful lecture on the virtues of charity, but I will not care that I don't give $1 in charity, right? And we can give many other examples, right? I can speak about, good character and mesmerize the crowd, right? Subhanallah, Sheikh Fulan, right? Imam Fulan, beautiful lecture he gave. And then I could go and abuse my family. And that would be totally normal for me to do. Meaning, unfortunately, this has become a reality now, that words are totally different from our actions now, right? And our actions are speaking louder than our words, right? And it's like Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, right? That is being done, but there's no importance given to following up with one's own actions. That is becoming something totally irrelevant and different. And this is, there are grave warnings regarding this, right? That people who behave like this. And this is why, when we listen to the warnings of those who do Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, but they don't take their own da'wah seriously, meaning they don't have intention to do themselves. They're only doing it, why? Because they're being paid to do it. Or there is some other worldly benefit in it. This is why they're lecturing people. They're doing Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. But when it comes to their own selves, there's no concern, right? The warnings are so grave, right? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he used to read the hadith and he used to cry profusely because he was one who narrated most hadith from all of the Sahaba, and he used to fear the warnings of such people and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish them. The warnings are so grave that, if it wasn't for the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar, like, a person would never do this. I never sit here and do tafseer of the Qur'an. If you hear the warnings, like, never give a lecture. Like, why put yourself in a position where you could be liable for such a warning, right? Like, it's not pleasurable to give lectures. Right? You must understand this. This has become like so trivial now. Like anyone stands up and gives a lecture on Deen, right? And they don't care whether they're doing what they're saying or not. Like they will give a lecture on prayer and ikram and everything, but there's no worry about am I doing what I'm telling people to do, what I'm encouraging people to do, the amr bil ma'ruf. No, it's just about can I speak about it or not. That's all. That's what it has come down to. Like we have become people of words, and our words are totally different from our actions, right? So this is why I'm talking about the first and foremost to remind myself, right? Um, I was saying that the warnings are so grave that if it wasn't for the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf, if it wasn't for the responsibility, a person would never give a lecture, would never speak about ma'ruf or do amr bil ma'ruf nahy anil munkar because it's just too risky, right? The warnings are too grave, and a person would just try to do what they can do on their own and let everyone else fend for themselves. This would have been, but there's no like we can't shy away from this. You can't relieve yourself from the obligation of telling people to do good. Because again, Amr bil Ma'ruf is a wajib, it's an obligation. So if it was not an obligation, then it wouldn't be worth it. But because it is an obligation, we must do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar, but at the same time, we must avoid the other extreme. So the summary of what I'm trying to say here is that we have fallen into two extremes. One extreme is we've totally abandoned Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar. And thus we are deficient in this obligation. The other extreme is we're doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar without the worry of acting upon what we're doing, right? And having no concern, right? So like anyone and everyone just stands up and speaks, and there's no worry of, am I doing what I'm telling people to do, right? And it feels like there's no burden. So when you're in this position of Amr bil Ma'ruf, it should weigh down on a person, right? Like I'm telling people to do good, but I know, how, like what my position is. And this is why whenever we do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar, it should be with the intention that, oh Allah, give me the tawfiq, first and foremost. I'm talking to 1,000 people in front of me, but the first person I'm talking to is myself, right? And this is our scholars say this is one of the most effective ways when you speak about good and you will forbid evil. This is one of the most effective ways of becoming good and refraining from evil. When a person has the sincere intention to reform oneself and to refrain from evil, the more they talk about it, the more they themselves will comply, right? It becomes a reminder for oneself. So as long as a person is keeping this in mind, this is important that with Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar, a person must keep in mind that this is first and foremost for myself. And a person should make an effort to reform oneself as much as possible and refrain from evil. Then, inshallah, this person will be saved from the warnings of not practicing what they preach and will also be fulfilling the obligation of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar. This is the middle way. This is the middle way that we must come on to, right? And not go to these two extremes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us, right? And it's not easy, like I was saying. It's not something to be, to boast about, right? Now it has become a source of like, gaining praise from people, a source of boasting. Like, look how many people were in my lecture, right? Look how many people are following me. Look how many people are in my program, right? It's become, something of competition, right? And fame. This is what it has come down to. And obviously, um, this is something that we should be staying far away from. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, and even the Prophet ﷺ, when he would be inviting people, it wasn't like, it was very light on him. Allah Himself says, "Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila." Like we have burdened you with something very heavy. Even the prophets, when they would call people to Islam, transmit the message of Allah, it was a great burden upon them. It wasn't like, yeah, I'm the Prophet of Allah, right? You guys all have to listen to me. I have authority over you, and I have this privilege and honor, and none of you have it. No, we can see in their character the humbleness. This burden weighed them down. Likewise, Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar should weigh the Ummah down, that this huge responsibility that has been given to us, I am not worthy of it. I'm the one who is the most deficient in it, but I still have to do it. And in this way, when a person comes on this moderate path, then this becomes the means of Islah, reformation, inshallah. So that was a clarification that needed to be made under this ayah. So, like we were saying, the ayah is not addressing Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi anil Munkar, that is addressed under other ayat and other ahadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in this ayah is reminding the Sahaba, reminding the Ummah, don't make these bold claims, right? Be humble in your claims. When you make a claim, you intend to do something, say inshallah. Seek the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and don't have so much dependency on yourself. Like, how do you know when Allah reveals that jihad, right, fighting for the sake of Allah is the most beloved? How do you know you will be able to do it? Right? So don't be so bold in your claims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. It is greatly displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you make claims that you do not intend to do, or you might not be able to do, and you don't acknowledge this. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to speak about the most beloved act, deed in the eyes of Allah. يُحِبُّ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِهِ. Inshallah, we'll continue from there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to continue, right, with whatever deficiency we have, whatever weaknesses we have, to be people who encourage one another to do good, and who forbid one another from evil. At least those who are the closest to us, our family members, with wisdom, right, with kindness, with knowledge, as much as possible, to encourage ourselves and others to stay on the right path, to do good, to refrain from evil. And at the same time, may Allah give us this understanding and this recognition that we are first and foremost most in need of this Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. And Allah save us from being from those people who do not practice what they preach. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also make us practicing in whatever we tell one another. Allah give us the tawfiq. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم لك الحمد بالإيمان ولك الحمد بالإسلام ولك الحمد بالقرآن اللهم لك الحمد بالأهل والمال اللهم لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك جزا الله عنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم بما هو أهله. Oh Allah, please forgive us our sins, our deficiencies. Oh Allah, we show gratitude to all of those, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of the Sahaba who spent their lives doing Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. Through their efforts, we are Muslim today. Oh Allah, oh Allah, please reward them in the best manner. Oh Allah, give them the highest stages of paradise. Oh Allah, reward them every moment. Oh Allah. O Allah, make us from those believers who stand firm on Amr bil Ma'ruf Nahi Anil Munkar. Make our lives be a source of encouragement for others also to do good. And Allah, make us a source of encouragement for others to refrain from evil. O Allah, and make us from those who practice what they preach. O Allah, O Allah, do not make us from those who are oblivious of themselves, O Allah, who forget themselves, O Allah, looking at others, O Allah. O Allah, let it make us aware of our own deficiencies and sins, O Allah. Make us so preoccupied with our own sins that we cannot see the sins of others, O Allah. O Allah, preoccupy us with our own deficiencies, such that we do not see the deficiencies of others, O Allah. O Allah, make it easy for us to remain firm, steadfast, O Allah. Grant forgive the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have mercy upon the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. O Allah, protect the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. O Allah, grant Glory to the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Once again, O Allah, help those who are in need of help, O Allah. Relieve those from hardship who are in hardship, O Allah. Give food to those who are hungry, O Allah. Clothe those who are in need of clothing, O Allah. O Allah, give homes to those who do not have homes to live in, O Allah. O Allah, those who are in need of a lawful source of income, O Allah, grant them a lawful source of income, O Allah. Those who are in any type of hardship, O Allah, relieve them from their hardships, O Allah. O Allah, remove the injustice that exists on earth, O Allah. Remove the oppression that exists on earth, O Allah. O Allah, spread justice, O Allah, peace upon the earth, O Allah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصل اللهم وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك.